Hello everyone, I am Sisir. Today I am going to give a brief presentation on my project. My project aim is to build a serverless web application that contains all the required inputs to get to invoke a GET request for the data that is stored in the Amazon Cloud. For my project, these are the services that are mainly required to. I have designed a brief architecture of my project. Now, the point that has to be noted is the order of the steps that can be followed to complete this project may vary from person to person, but there is a certain limitation to follow the order of the steps because all these services are integrated with each other, and if proper order is misleaded, then the project may not be forwarded further. So I always recommend the steps that are involved to create the resources for the project have to be done first, and the execution part uh, should be performed next. So AWS DynamoDB table I prefer to create first, and the execution part Lambda and API gateway have to be created next after creating the DynamoDB table, according to my view. Now we will discuss each step in brief. Obviously, the first step is to create IAM role. We only need certain permissions for my project. The two policies that are standardly required for my project are DynamoDB read-only access and Lambda full access. Here, I do not require any DynamoDB full access, so I have kept only read-only access. The IAM role that I have created is get customer details. So I am dealing with customer details here, so I have given relevant name. You can give any name for your project IAM role. As I discussed before, DynamoDB read-only access and Lambda full access are the required permission policies that I have attached for my IAM role. The next important step for my project is to create a Lambda function that contains the necessary execution logic to integrate with DynamoDB and API gateway. Here, do not forget to create the IAM role before creating the Lambda function, because when creating the Lambda function under permissions section, we have to mention the existing role that we have created in the earlier step, as I am showing here. The Lambda function name that I have created is get customer details by email. As I said earlier, the name does not matter. The third one is Amazon DynamoDB table. You have to create one Amazon table with your required name with the partition key as email. Here, partition key and primary key are almost similar. In AWS, we have partition key instead of primary key, so I am mentioning partition key here. Give partition key has to be unique, and the partition key that we are mentioning in the JavaScript backend has to be same name. If you are mentioning capital E here, then in the backend also we have to mention capital E. So give a simple name for partition key so that it will be remembered in the backend logic. The attributes that I am mentioning in the items section here are email, first name and last name. All these are string parameters. The table name that I have taken is customer details. As said before, name doesn't matter. The fourth one is creating a REST API. I am specifically mentioning that this has to be created instead of this. This is a private REST API. We do not need any private APIs now. Create a public REST API. Here is the screenshot for my API gateway. Things that are to be considered here are in the succeeding steps. We have to create a URL query string parameter. This URL query string parameter defines what has to be given as an input to display the attributes that are stored in the DynamoDB table. This URL string parameter content type is JSON. The data is given in flower brackets as usual in JSON. The integration request is created to integrate API gateway with Lambda function. A pop-up is shown while integrating with Lambda function. You have to click OK, then only the integration request is taken. Do not forget to deploy the API or else the changes will not be happened. Codes are another crucial part in while creating REST API. We have to enable and update whenever required. Then then only our static website that we create later will work. After creating all these steps as shown here, there will be an invoke URL provided for the API after deployment. Post that invoke URL here and then the integration request name after the slash. As said earlier, this is a GET request that I am mentioning in my project, so select GET here, and the partition key that we have mentioned in the table is email. I have given capital E email and a simple name email, and the value that I have mentioned in the item in DynamoDB table is arthurcc@gmail.com. The data that contains email as arthurcc@gmail.com will be displayed here. You may create one or more items in your DynamoDB table, that is your wish. After clicking send, as you can see, this is the data that is displayed. This is the data that I have stored in DynamoDB table and this is being displayed. So we can successfully say that the Lambda function we created and the API gateway we deployed are working very fine. Now the final step is to build a serverless web application to give inputs through web application and invoke the data and display the data through web application. This is a very interesting step. For this, we require a static website that contains simple inputs and JavaScript backend. In the JavaScript backend, we have to mention our invoke URL. And as we are discussing about the logic here, I wanted to mention one small thing. This is the logic that I have used for Lambda function. The point that has to be noted, as I said before, is here we are creating Lambda function before the DynamoDB table creation, but we are giving the DynamoDB table name here. You may wonder if we want to create DynamoDB table before the Lambda function creation. No, even though we are mentioning the table name here, we can test the Lambda function whenever we want. Later in the process, when we create the DynamoDB table only, we can test this function and the Lambda function works perfectly fine. There is no problem. And then provide bucket policy. Then only we can access the static website endpoint that we get after enabling the static website hosting in the S3. So be sure to enable static website hosting and also writing the bucket policy, necessary bucket policy. This is the endpoint for my project, and this is the web application that I have created to provide email address as input and getting the details, necessary details related to that email address that are stored in the DynamoDB table. So as you can see, the Amazon S3 bucket that I have created is project files, and these three files are the static website related files that I have uploaded into the Amazon S3. As you can see here, after clicking the get details, we can get the data related to the email address that we are storing in the DynamoDB table. In this way, we can build a simple serverless web application with all the required inputs to test the GET request for the data that we are storing in the AWS cloud. Thank you.